the laying of the blocks. Okay, so once you have that front block traced off, you've got your grain. This one needs to be bang up against the hip. So you put your hip there together. That's for the women's wear blocks. It doesn't work out for menswear. For menswear, you need to leave a little space, okay? But whether you've got them right bang up or you've left a little space, be sure and have them level. And you can extend the hip line. Okay, so I could have them slightly separated and place them like that, do you know? But for women's wear, you can put them right up against each other. So I'm just going to check now that these are parallel. So in terms of making things parallel, we were looking at straighter grains yesterday as well. It's got to be equal distance. So I'm doing the same thing, or applying the same concept as yesterday, where I'm just checking that they're equal distance all the way along. I'll come out a little bit. Now they're parallel lines and they're also lined up horizontally. And so now I can trace over this one or trace around it. It's very confusing at the beginning with everything looking similar, so I'd really recommend doing a large B and a large F on every draft that you have. So the trousers with the pleated waistline. The trousers illustrated are full at the front waistline and shaped at the hem, shaped in at the hem. So can you see that? They're going to go in a little. The production block, which is the low waist measurement, was used and a curved waistline and waistband selected. So she's telling you all the things that was happening here, and again, this isn't exactly what I was talking about yesterday, where she might say something that is referring to the page beforehand. So this is exactly it. So when you're going, well, what's she talking about? Well, you better read the page before, because that's all the introduction to trousers, and she has talked about waistlines and shaped waistlines and all of that stuff there, and so that's what she's referring to. So then she says body sections. Trace around a selected block, which we have done already, and then cut away, she says, the depth of the waistband from the top of the trouser. So we do not ever cut away, don't we not? When she says cut, we do an adaptation, or we trace and then we cut. So then she says mark points 1 and 2 at the knee line, 1 and 2. So like when we were doing our blocks, read what she says, then look at your diagram, which is here. Find the position so then you can understand her instructions. And then she says 3 and 4 at the hemline. So we've marked 3 and 4 at the hemline. 1.5 in from the leg seam. So she's saying mark 3 and 4 at the hemline, and she's taken the seam in. And then join lines 1 to 3 and 2 to 4. So then we're going to join it in. So essentially we're narrowing in the bottom of that leg. Okay, I'll stop there and we'll do those few things. What she means is take away the amount of the waistband. So what we would do is draw it on, you know, we'd come down whatever amount we want, the depth of the waistband. This waistband is come up from the waist, but what she's saying is in this case, we're starting our waistband and we're coming down. So this whole area here, you can have different types of waistbands, right? They can come down, they can be wide, they can be narrow, or they can come up. So in this case, we have our waistline and we're going to come down. And waistbands are typically maybe 3 or 4 centimeters. I'm going to come down 4 because you're not working in half scale this time. There's just one adaptation, and it's today that we're working in quarter scale. As you can see, the trouser is huge, and this is about a quarter scale. So when I do my measurements in full scale here, for this draft only, we will be dividing that by 4. So if I come down 4 centimeters here, you will be coming down on your diagram 1. Yeah. So you divide it by 4. So 4 centimeters I'm coming down, and these are not exactly straight. So don't just measure once and try and square across. Measure down the whole time. So 4, 4, all the way along, okay? And the same here. So for you, it's 1, 1, 1, all along. we have done an adaptation, reminder, you need to leave your first lines there. We don't erase them, but we need to try and ignore them and go, this is now the top of my trouser. And what I can do then is wiggle through here to sort of say, those are gone. This is now the top. 1 is here and 2 is here. So positions are always circled, remember? The 1 and 2, and then she says mark 3 and 4 in, essentially, from the hem line. So that's the hem line, that's the hem of our trouser. And she's telling you 1.5 centimeters in from the leg seam. Okay? Now, we need to find a nice measurement that goes into a quarter scale. So we've come in here, I'm going to put, our full scale measurement would be 2 then, yeah? And you guys are coming in 0.5. Red is the newer adapted line. But for you guys, you'll have 2 pencil lines, and so that gets a little more confusing. So again, if you want, you can follow my thing, which is to wiggle through those lines to kind of go, they're gone. I'm not using them. I am now using this. And we have to do the same thing on the back. So we're coming in the same on the back trouser at the bottom. Come in your amounts there. So the next thing she says back, cut along the hip line. Then she says open a wedge approximately 3 centimeters wide at the crutch line for crutch ease. So that's what she was talking about here when we were reading through the first page. So we're going to do that. In this case we are going to cut, but we're not going to cut because our golden rule is we never cut our construction. We do need to cut to open out, but whenever we have to do that, then we need to trace off our whole piece and cut a new piece because we need to see step 1 and we need to see step 2. What we're going to do is draw a line. I'm going to draw a line at that point here.
How far down is that one?
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a scissors on this line. So a scissors means this is a cutting line. And it marks it as different to other lines. So see the way these have arrows, so we know that's a straight grain line. This has a scissors, so we know it's a cutting line. These were construction lines. We constructed our new design from them. So again, there's lots of lines, and we need to start being able to talk about what line is what. What that means is I need to trace off this whole trouser leg. And what we're going to do is essentially a part 2 of our construction. So I put a new piece of paper on top, and I'm going to trace right the way around, but I'm only going to trace the new information that I need. This is not a pattern piece. This is still part of our construction. We're going to trace off, but I'm going to trace off along this bottom line, this red line, all the way along. Then I'm going to trace off along the red line here. And then I'm going to trace on my cutting line again. I'm going to put a scissors on it again so I remember what it is. I'm just going to put my B in there just so I don't get mixed up. And so now I'm going to cut around this. So now I have the trouser leg. So you see that? I have the trouser leg that I've traced off. This is still part of the construction. I'm still adapting this until I've completed my adaptations. It is still in the construction phase or the working pattern phase. So I'm going to cut along this line here, and I'm going to open it out as I've been instructed. So this is one way of how we extend our line. Like essentially what's happening here is this line here we need to get longer. Then you cut along the line as I have and you open it out. So see the way that opens out like that? So we are like the pattern drafters and this is our designer. She has given us this design. So we're trying to interpret her design. We looked at the back of the trouser and we're gone. You can see how low the crutch line is there and you're like, oh, she wants extra ease in the back. And then we're going, okay, what we're gonna do is slash that, open it, and give extra ease. Back, cut along the hip line, open a wedge approximately 3 centimeters wide. So you need to actually stick this to something. So I'll show you what that looks like. You glue it. I prefer glue. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to take this and put glue on it. Just a bit. And stick it down, and then I can measure from that, you see. Actually, do you know what we'll do? We'll do 4, so that divided by 4, divided by 4 to scale, you're opening at 1, okay? So let's do 4, I'm gonna do 4. 4 full scale, which in this case is quarter scale. It's the only time we're doing quarter scale, but you'll just be doing 1. And that means you take the rest of the trouser. Now notice I left a hinge. You see the way I cut to that point but not through? So I left a tiny hinge. It's only a tiny bit, like 2 millimeters. That's so I don't interrupt this measurement here. All right? It's gonna make a funny shape, which I'll have to smooth out, but for the moment we won't worry about that. We'll just get okay? And you need to be sure that everything is flat. This is called flat pattern cutting. If anything is ever sticking up off of your paper in a 3-dimensional form, you have done something wrong. You are no longer flat pattern cutting. So that's what you should do, have on your page and on your paper. So the next point here, Winifred says front in bold, cut across the knee line. So once she says front, remember we go down and we look at our front, this one here, and this is our diagram. So this is what we're about to do. We're going to have a piece that looks like this. Notice the grayed out sections are the bits that get opened. So that bit here, she has kind of grayed out. And you can do that too if you want, if it helps, or helps it match the diagram. So cut across the knee line, divide the top section along the grain line. Open at the waistline approximately 3 centimeters and extend the waistline by approximately 3 centimeters. Divide the extra fullness into 2 or 3 pleats. This depends on the amount added to the waistline. So this is conceptual a little bit here, so I need to explain it. She's telling us basically that we're going to come along a bit like we cut here and opened out. We're going to come now to the front and we're going to come along our straight grain line and we're going to cut down there and we're going to open an amount. So we're going to open out, she's giving us a certain amount. And then she's saying to add extra onto the side. So do you see the way we're adding 3 onto the side? So once we start adding things in like this, we have to be mindful that we need to come right back to the measurement that we started with. Okay, because you can see that comes back into a waistband. So it's fine to add as long as you're doing something that brings it back in. The doing something that brings things back in has a term. It's called suppression. Okay, and under suppression there are various things. There is darts, there is tucks, there is pleats, there is gathers, etc. So that's a term. So don't forget to draw in your dart there. We aren't going to ignore it, we need to consider it. So you see I have traced around and I'm cutting down. And I've cut down to the knee, right?
Okay.
So if this is important to have a look at, if I try and open this, I've only cut to the knee, straight down in that cutting line. If I open to the knee, just see what happens.
Little poker at the end.
It is not flat pattern cutting. If you notice on her page, there's also grayed out section there at the knee. So what you can do is cut in here as well. So you're cutting not only down, but you're cutting across there and the other way. You're also leaving a hinge on each side. Okay, so see the way all of a sudden it goes flat? Now? Because I've released and it opens out a certain amount there. And now I can maneuver this. So you see this, I can kind of maneuver it. I only want a little pleat, I want a large pleat, do you know? So this is where it becomes then designer's choice what you're doing. But in this case, we're not really the designer. The designer has given us our design. So we're pattern drafting to match this particular flat drawing. So I think we'll just do 4 and 4 because it divides better. Okay, so I've got my amounts. So the first thing is we need to open this a certain amount. But to open this an amount, we don't know where and how to open it, do you know? Which side are we moving and all of that. So we're going to extend this line here, our straighter grain line up from the bottom of the trouser, and that will give us a line to open this amount from, if you know what I mean. Because you see the way now you can see that's lopsided, that's come over a certain amount, and that if we don't have that line in, we don't know which way or how to balance how much we're opening. So we're going to open 6 here. And we're going to open, we're going to add 2. That's full scale measurement. So for you, that's 1.5. So open it in full 1.5. So that's 0.75 on each side of that line. So that the full amount that it's open is that. So then we're going to glue it down. So yeah, so I'm opening 6, so I'm going to mark 3 and 3 on each side, and then I'm going to glue one side down, and then glue the other side. So this has come out too. And then I'm going to trace that in, draw, like blend it in. Okay, and there's a bit opened up here and here. Just 6 plus 2, so this plus this equals 8. So 8 is the amount that we have added. So that means it's the amount that we have to put back into something. In this case, we're going to put it back into pleats. This is a construction. All right, that's our first construction. This is a construction step 2. So we generally call that construction step 2. So now we're going on to the trace off, the final trace off. And then I need to mark in my grain line. Kind of wiggled through there, but I can still see it. Okay, and then my waistline is like, it's slightly curved. I can keep that, but I can blend it slightly, so keep the angle. So you can you see that now that that is the trace off with none of the information underneath about how we've opened it out. I've traced off the outer edge, all right, and this is a much cleaner piece. Now I do need to mark in my pleats, because at the moment this waistline is way too big. It wouldn't fit onto the waistband. And so we just maybe choose where we would like to put them. So I'm going to come from the center line there that I can see, and I'm going to build my pleat to the right hand side of that. So I'm going to take that as one side of my pleat, and I'm going to come over 4 centimeters. So that's 1 centimeter for you in quarter scale. Now I need to decide how far between this pleat and the next one. So I would say it's about 4 centimeters to the next one. So do you see what it looks like now? It looks really clear. What you do is you mark in with lines, like arrows. So you're going to come like this. And so you mark in between the... Now these aren't actually, from the drawing, it looks like they're not pressed down that far. So I'm only going to draw them in at the top. They're not a pleat that, say, goes all the way down the bottom of the leg. If that was the case, I'd need to draw these lines all the way down and fill in those marks all the way down. But can you see how now, once I filled in those, it's very obvious that's the pleat and that's the pleat. I'm not going to mix up the space in between, which could be interpreted as a pleat before we do those markings, do we? It has only the information that's needed, which is this. It does not contain information which the sewer and the cutter does not need, which is all of that. It always has a straight grain. It always has all the notches. And then it has its labeling. So your 4 lines where you put your labeling. The first one is, put your own name, please. The next one is what? The name of the garment. So this one we can just call pleated trouser. So which piece it is, which piece of the trouser. So we've determined the garment. Now which part of the garment? So in this case it's the front. You can just put front, or you can write front pattern piece. Or cutting. So how many are we cutting of this, do you think? We're cutting 2, hopefully. We don't want just one leg. Yeah. So we're cutting 2. And then we're going to put our seam allowance right the way around, and we're going to put our hem allowance at the bottom, and we're going to fold up for our fishtail because that hem is slightly angled.